So I would like to ask Rosanna a few questions. What are your opinions regarding the ethical aspects of data collection and its use for smart algorithms? Do you consider the fact that energy is today's info, is today considered as a basic necessity to be a justification for freely using such information, or as an additional degree of attention which should be taken when dealing with such sensitive information?
So thank you for this question. I think this is like something that we already touched a little bit upon before, and for sure a very important issue. And as I said before, like digitalization is coming to basically all sectors, whether we want it or not. So for example, we have digitalization, like especially now with the pandemic, digitalization of other sectors too, such as education, workforce, and so on. And this is already happening in the energy sector as well for some time now. Of course, it's a huge effort, and this is something that is going to take some time. And in this sense, like whenever we talk about digitalization, we have to talk about ethics and what we mean by ethics, and also in terms like how this data is collected, what is it used for, what assumptions are made when we collect this data, and so on. And of course, like what kind of risks it brings, for example, to have this grid connected to the houses of everybody. And for example, we have risks, I think someone already mentioned this, but for example, the risk of like having someone knowing your entire consumption at home, which means that people can know when you're at home, for example. In a sense, we already have this for the people, for example, they already have like a smart assistant or smart other smart devices at home. So for example, I have my Alexa with me, and then like I come home and I say, like I ask to turn on the light and stuff like this. And this is all like, I mean, this is the price that comes with digitalization of on one hand, you have much more technology, you have much more like innovation to your life. But on the other hand, you have this problem of like what is being done with my data, you know. And this is like in a kind of like a user or individual scale. We can also think of this in a larger and more serious scale, which is like, for example, if you know, as much as we know, this technology has the potential for us to understand how the behavior of one individual is, we can also know the behavior or a community, and all sorts of dangerous or weird things can start to happen, such as, for example, even to sometimes like consider like a terrorism, even like this having like intentionally created blackouts to just like create damage and so on. And this is for sure something like, I mean, I don't want to try, I don't want to sound like too gloomy or like, but it's like something that is for sure a concern. And the short answer to this is like transparency and regulation or policy, if you want. So in the same sense that we have like in Europe now, the GDPR, this is like the General Data Protection Resolution, specifically like like more general, like we can have something specifically for some sort of regulation, even like worldwide maybe, because this is like a really like a social concern, because if you're going to have like entire countries or entire regions all connected into this smart grid that is using the data, is collecting this data constantly, we need to know what is being done with this data in terms of transparency, and what can be done in terms of policy, so we can decide whether we want to be involved with this or not. So data is like still like something that is like is becoming an asset. Like, I mean, it's already like people sometimes say that this is the new oil and so on, but the point is that, like, I mean, data is power. And there is also the other ethical concerns, such as, for example, if you think about it, like I mentioned before, like you have all these developing countries that have a completely different grid from and energy consumption in general that is different from what we have, let's say in Europe or on the like in the northern countries and so on. And but at the same time, you also have, for example, European or North American companies investing in these developing countries, which in a sense can be seen as something that is necessary to bring the technology, so this transition can happen for the developing countries too. But on the other hand, those are the people that will be collecting those data, and then it's kind of like an international issue, if you want. And so having this notion that the data can be biased, for example, like the same problem that we have in general in AI, that you collect data and you create your models based on the like some small group of people, or like the behavior of a small community. It's not going to be the same as like what we have, for example, let's say here in South America, where I am right now, we have our grid mostly, not mostly, but like a huge part of our grid is actually from hydro. And this is quite different from Europe, and this is quite different from Africa and so on. So like having this notion that like the bias that we have in the data is also something that we have to take into account. Like this is also a matter of ethics, like what kind of assumptions we are making when we are taking this data and so on. And the final like ethical concern that I think we don't stress enough is that like one of the reasons why we are going into this energy transition is because you want to reduce our CO2 emissions because of the climate crisis and so on, and all the sustainable development goals and all these things. And we have to be a bit careful when we talk about AI, when we talk about big data and so on. You know, like this all comes with a price, and this all comes with a footprint price, like a CO2 footprint price, which is like those models. I mean, not necessarily everything that is going to be used in terms of AI, but like you need to train those models, and for that you need to consume energy, and this is the price you pay. And like, I mean, in terms of like NLP models, are of course like the most expensive models and so on, this can have a huge footprint, like a CO2 footprint. So like we can have something like about 7 times the amount of a person, like of an average person CO2 footprint in a year, you know. So like, and this is huge. So we have to really think that like how, in terms of like when you are collecting data, what is the assumptions that we are making? What are we exposing to the grid and to whoever is controlling this data? And also, what does it mean to use those technologies in terms of sustainability? So like these are all, in a sense, like under the same umbrella of ethics, and for sure, like things that we need to discuss as a society. And it's not something that is going to be a decision of one country or one region in the world. It has to be something that, if it's going to be for everybody, everybody has to have a say, because otherwise we will have issues like that we already have in the world of like something like the story being told as like some regions in the world and not considering others.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful talk regarding the question. I would ask you this last question. Do you have any message which you would like to share with our current researchers and engineers working in this field?
Sure. So I think we can see the energy sector and this transition, especially in terms of using AI and so on, from 2 perspectives again. One is like the energy sector is a very traditional field, and is something that is like out there for a very long time, like centuries and so on. And it's been like very well established, and like we have like, this is the way of doing things. But now on the other hand, we have like now in this century, we have the energy transition. I mean, to be honest, it started before, but like it's getting like a full speed, like in this century. And this is a multidisciplinary topic, and it involves the expertise of many fields and many professionals. It's like, of course, like we have engineers, but we also have policymakers, we have the finance sector and research, and now we also have data science, we have the mobility. And so this is something that like there's no ground truth, because we're trying to change some huge system. Like, I mean, most of the world we have electricity. Um, and how we change that, and how we also give access to electricity to the regions that still don't have, like collectively, considering all those expertise. And this is something that is like a very complex system if you think about. So those things being said, it is important to not fall into some of the most common issues of digitalization, which are like becoming the dinosaur of saying like, this is how things are done and we're not going to be doing different because we know better and so on. But on the other hand, not try to see AI as a magic pill, you know, like because it's not just, oh, we're going to bring AI and we are going to solve all the problems. Definitely not. But we need to have like this conversation between like all those experts to solve a very, very complex problem, and like a kind of honestly, from my perspective at least, like one of the most complex problems that we have nowadays. I mean, apart from climate change and so on, like it's kind of also a byproduct of that. So like in a sense, you have to try to use or see AI as an augmentation of our expertise. So for example, we don't see necessarily as AI as like AI is a tool. Like AI will not necessarily learn things that we already don't have notions. I mean, in some cases is the case, but in most of the cases it's just like how we can expand our knowledge that is already here and just make it more efficient, because that's what we need. Like we need efficiency so we can reach the SDG goals by 2030. So I hope this answered the question.
Thank you so much, Rosana. It's a really great advice for us, future engineers who are going to do big things in future. And thank you so much. I'd really like to thank all the panel members for actively involving in this discussion.